Hey everyone, I hope you all are doing well and having a grand day wherever you are in Middle Earth. Yoiston here, and I'm once again joined by my good friend Royan. Royan, say hi.
Hello, everyone.
So today we're going to continue some of our conversations from last time and start some new ones. So first, I wanted to jump into a topic that's kind of that I get a lot in some comment sections and stuff like that. So it's if I had to have a job and a home in Middle Earth, what would that be? So for me, if I were to do kind of this package deal, right, and have to live in the same place where I'd work, kind of thing, I would definitely want to be a Dunedain Ranger. I'd want to live in like the North Downs, Even Dim kind of area, and be a ranger and live there. But if it was just home, I think I'd want to live in the Shire. What about you, Ryan?
Well, I mean, this is an interesting question. It's because there's so many, like, what do you define as a job?
Yeah, that's true.
Uh, I wouldn't define being a ranger a job so much as it's a life.
Yeah, that's true.
But
That's fair.
but if I were looking for a straight economical opportunity, I want to be a traveling merchant. I want
Ooh.
to, because I mean, they were really big in the medieval times, of which Lord of the Rings is loosely based off of. And I just think it would be really cool to go from Gondor to go from Minas Tirith to like Edoras to sell my goods and
Oh
wares.
yeah. Yeah, that's true. I feel like a good place for a job could be like the Dale Lands and Lake Town, because I know
Oh
like
yeah,
yeah, Erebor and all of them up there, like they're just this economic capital of the world. Minas Tirith, I would say, being the other. So yeah, that's true. I'd say that'd be pretty good. Where would you want to live?
oh Gondor,
Oh yeah.
anywhere in Gondor really.
Um, would you want to do like Minas Tirith or more out in the country, like the base of Belfalas or Anfalas or any of that?
Uh, I feel like I could really swing either. They both I love both of them. Like I love the city life,
Hmm.
in real life,
Oh yeah.
but just I can just imagine the Gondor countryside just being absolutely peaceful and beautiful
Oh
when
yeah.
there's not orcs
True.
running around.
Yeah, I would
But
say like the Blackroot Vale, just like near Dol Amroth. I feel like that would be a great place to live too.
oh, I
Um,
think anywhere outside of Dol Amroth there and like that area of Gondor is just absolutely beautiful.
oh yeah, yeah, and for any of you guys out there who don't know, I imagine this is the same for you, Ryan. I'm kind of
Mhm.
imagining Lord of the Rings Online version of Dol Amroth and all that kind of stuff as we're speaking about this.
Oh yeah. That was actually one of the things I was thinking about when you first posed this question to me
Mhm.
was if I was in Lord of the Rings online and I had to pick a monetary trade, I would be one of the fast travel
Oh yeah.
horsemen so I could make all kinds of bank.
Oh yeah, one of the stable masters. That's true. Oh my, yeah, you do really well.
So if you don't play the game, basically it's a lot like World of Warcraft where you have a massive map with lots of different stable hands that work
Mhm.
as like fast travel like points, and then you can pay some money to instantly travel between them, and whoever is the guy that runs those is the richest man in the game, hands down.
True, true. And just a shout out here. If any of you guys are interested in playing Lord of the Rings online, I'd definitely say check it out. It's a fun one.
You have a video on it, don't you?
Oh yeah, yeah. My lore review I think I made 2 months ago. Yeah, it's really a fun game, and I mean, yeah. Again, like we mentioned last time, that's kind of how we became good friends too through that game. So,
Good times,
oh
man. Yeah,
yeah.
so
All right, well, we'll move on from there. So last time we talked about our more favorite characters and plot lines in the stories. Now we're gonna try, at least this is kind of gonna be a hard question to answer, but our least favorite characters and plot lines and why. Now, for me, if I'm starting off with characters, and I think I mentioned this in like my 100 subscriber Q&A like a year ago. It was like I think Lotho Sackville Baggins. I mean, the Sackville Bagginses in general were pretty awful, but I think, and I understand why they were there, right? But my problem with them is that they kind of sold themselves out. It's less Lobelia, but more her husband and her son. They kind of sold themselves out to Saruman and to all of his ruffians and stuff. And I just kind of feel like that's a little bit uncharacteristic of a hobbit. I mean, I get there you're going to have some bad eggs, but I don't know. I just that's kind of always been something that I'm just like, really, really, dude. And I mean, at the end of Lord of the Rings, you feel some sympathy for him because I think Wormtongue killed one of the Sackville Bagginses, but ultimately, it's kind of yeah. I feel like they're a little uncharacteristic concerning the rest of the hobbits, but that's just me. As for a plot line, I can't really think of any because I see how they all kind of fit into one another, and that's where it's like the hard part of this question. But I'm gonna throw it to you. What about you, Ryan?
Well, again, like just like the Saxville Bagginses, I think there's characters in the Legendarium that are very much written to dislike. It's a lot like Dolores Umbridge from the Harry Potter series, where you have this character where every character trait is just made so that you dislike them. And that's the Saxville Bagginses as well as Grima Wormtongue for me.
Yeah.
Saruman is a close second for me because I just don't like their motives. I don't like their way of doing things. I can really get down with a strong villain, but I just feel like for both those characters, they don't have strong wills, and that's one of the themes.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess if we're talking about the Lord of the Rings primarily, something that I mean, I really love Theoden's redemption, but I guess how he gets corrupted that it doesn't bother me. It's really sad. I like it, right? It's kind of
it's really.
But like the fall of a king, the fall of someone honorable, right? It's just kind of, I don't know,
I think the difference for me between Theoden's fall and Saruman's fall is that Theoden's makes you sad, whereas Saruman's makes you upset.
True. Oh yeah, yeah. It's just like Saruman, dude. Come on, you were trusted by Manwë, you were trusted by all the other Valar, and you screwed it up.
I mean, they made it. I mean, Peter Jackson made it worse in the Hobbit movies. Saruman is not a character in the Hobbit, as far as I remember. It's been a while since I read the book, but the way he's portrayed in that movie he's just kind of a mean guy.
He is, yeah. I get that. I like he's always written to be stern, and I mean it's respectful.
I think there's a difference between stern and like looking for flaws in other people.
That's true. Yeah, he's all calling out Radagast and all that kind of stuff. He kind of does that in the books too. He's kind of this. He's really.
He's a roaster, dude. He roasts Gandalf like every second.
I know, right? And that was before he was evil, and then he just just went worse. Yeah, and speaking about the Hobbit, I mean, so I think the extent that Saruman was in the Hobbit was only kind of behind the scenes. I don't think he's mentioned by name, but we know that Gandalf goes to meet with the White Council. But that's something that it's kind of weird thinking about the Hobbit too. I guess if we're talking about odd plot lines, Gandalf, right? He sets this whole adventure up. He talks to Thorin and Bree. He says, or on the edge of Breeland, he says, "Let's go, reclaim Erebor. I'm gonna set you up with a burglar. We're gonna get going. We're gonna do this." And he does all that, right? But then, I think it was, on the edge of Mirkwood, he leaves. He leaves the group.
He's just like peace.
And then we don't see him again until the very last second in the Battle of the Five Armies. Like he comes in and he's just like, "What are you guys doing?" But my thing, and I get that he had to go deal with Dol Guldur and Sauron as the Necromancer with the White Council and all that. But I don't know. That's something that kind of bothers me. It's just like he plays the mentor role. So I guess at least he didn't have to die in that one too. But I don't know. He plays this role. He's getting everyone together. He's kind of leading, but then he of his own volition kind of checks out. So that's something that it's a little odd, a little weird.
I mean, it's I remember this from so long ago. There was like this post on the internet. I don't remember where it was. I don't remember who posted it, but it was like this thing where it was like Gandalf is the scumbag raid leader who gets and he does this twice. He gets the raid together. Like he gets it going in both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, starts on the journey, then takes the leave to go do a side quest. And in Lord of the Rings, he goes and kills a boss and then comes back with all the loot. And he's just like, what's up? And then in The Hobbit, he goes and does a side quest to set up his next quest. Like it's scumbag raid leader.
True. He's all about the loot, all about that XP.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I get why he does it, and it's like that's where it's kind of hard to call out any characters or plot lines in Tolkien's works, is because it's so vast and so thought out to where it's like, well,
every character has like a reason for doing so from a literary and storytelling standpoint.
Exactly, yeah, and it's like you get why Gandalf left and why he had to go deal with that threat. It's just like bad timing, though. I mean, I don't know.
I was like, really, homie? Could you not, wait?
Wait like 2 more months, finish out the quest, and then.
Could you have let us know beforehand? Like, hey, I'm putting the team together. I'm gonna have to leave you though.
True.
For a little bit.
True that. Yeah, and in the books, it's even a little weirder because. I mean, in the movies, he does still leave of his own volition and all that kind of stuff. But in the books, he knows it was Sauron for like years, but he still didn't do anything about it because Saruman kind of prevented the White Council from doing so until it was most convenient for Saruman, because he didn't want Sauron to find the ring. So he's like, all right, now he's getting too strong. Let's go take him out. Right. I can't let this alliance form between him and Smaug. So let's go get it.
I also like, oh my gosh, I lost it. Oh yeah, so Gandalf, he doesn't even he doesn't even tell anyone where he's going. He's very much just like, all right, so I set you up. This is the Hobbit. He sets him up in Mirkwood. He's like, here's this scary path that you go. Do not leave the path. See you later.
Yeah, and that's like I like his line. I'm pretty sure it's in the books too. When he comes back and saves the dwarves and Bilbo from the 3 trolls and the Trollshaws, Thorin asks, what brought you back? Or, where were you? And he's like, looking forward. And what brought you back? Looking behind. It's like, oh, well, thanks, Gandalf. Very specific. But yeah, I'm trying to think of any plot lines or characters from the Silmarillion. I mean, obviously you have Fëanor, and you're
There's
just like,
a lot of plot lines.
Yeah, exactly. You have Fëanor, and it's just like, if you're just a little less hot-headed, but he had a spirit of flame. I can't blame him necessarily for.
I talked really about last time. He's like my favorite character. Oh, I can't hit him in the least favorite character too, man.
That's fair. He's a very complex character, and that's an interesting point too. Like, I think it's very unfair for people. I think we mentioned this too, to say that Tolkien's characters are not 3-dimensional. But would you say that the Silmarillion characters are more 3-dimensional than those in the Lord of the Rings, or would you say they're about the same?
I would say that the Silmarillion characters are more. I don't know. You could disagree with me, but when the difference between the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit characters versus the Silmarillion characters, I feel like there was less laid out in front of you, and more for you to picture for yourself from the Silmarillion characters.
I feel that, yeah.
So I feel like they really do feel more 3-dimensional because you can picture them in your mind more, or at least I felt that way. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that, right? Like, I feel like a lot of the Silmarillion is based on the Bible to some degree, and its characters, or its historical figures, and ultimately, I mean, a lot of characters in both pieces are pretty, I would say, pretty 3-dimensional. In the Silmarillion, right, you have Húrin and the children of Húrin, for instance. And I do plan to make a video eventually. I know I've been getting a lot of comments about that. I just want to do it at the right time so it's researched enough, all that kind of stuff. But ultimately you have these characters, right? And Turin, who accidentally kills like his best friend because he thought he was an orc, or falls in love.
Casual mistake.
Yeah, casual mistake. And I mean, he was so upset about that, but it's like you still have to move forward. And he did until slaying the dragon Glaurung after he lost everything. After he realized that his wife was his sister.
His wife was his sister, and he's like, wait a second.
So yeah, these are characters where it's just like, oh man, definitely kind of a gray sense of morality where I can't say you're this Aragorn, this godly character, because man, you did screw up a few times. But at the end of the day, you're not this antagonist. You're not a villain either. You played your part, you did it, and you made the world a better place because you took the first giant dragon out of it. But yeah, at the same time, it's definitely more of a gray area kind of thing.
I mean, they're just like real people. I feel like characters make a lot more mistakes.
Oh yeah.
More characters make more mistakes in the Silmarillion, as opposed to when I think about characters making mistakes in the Legend of the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Specifically, Denethor comes to mind immediately, and there's not a whole lot more past that, where it's like just people being ignorant or ignoring the warnings.
And I mean, even you have Boromir, right? And obviously he made one of the biggest mistakes.
Oh yes,
kind of giving into that greed and going after Frodo in the ring.
But there's not a whole lot past that.
Yeah, and there wasn't much. I mean, that was his willpower. There wasn't much he could do to like counter that. He kind of gave into his shadow and his desires, but he pretty much instantly recovered almost after that, after Frodo disappeared, and
he's like, wait a second.
He went and was a hero after that. So it's like even the characters who do make mistakes, generally, I would say, besides Denethor, who, but again, even he lost his mind to Sauron. So it's like, yeah, you can't blame them too much. That war was devouring him like mentally. So it's like they just did the best that they could, and that was that. But in the Silmarillion, it's almost like, wow, you could have done better.
Homie, are you okay?
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. I remember in the books, Aragorn, pretty much after Gandalf fell with the Balrog, he was the leader and he had to make some choices. But he said, I think when they were in Rohan, that he really regrets like a lot of the choices and he feels like a failure from the decisions he's made. And I'm like, well, you couldn't have done any better, really. I mean, you didn't know what was going on. You weren't above the situation. You were in it and you were acting as best as you could. So it's like, I can't say, oh, you're this three-dimensional gray area character. I would say Aragorn is three-dimensional, but not because he is almost evil. I would say he's still doing everything because he's trying to be good at heart, versus Turin, who again is trying to be good at heart, but it's like, just use your mind. Like you don't have to slay.
He's having a lot rougher time than Aragorn was.
Oh, he was. Yeah, exactly. And whether that was by circumstance or choosing from his own willpower, kind of the situations he got into, that is debatable and it depends on the situation. But yeah, you definitely have these characters that they just gave into their pride. I feel like pride is probably the biggest downfall of characters within Tolkien's works in general. Like Fëanor, I think he went down fighting Balrogs by himself. he lost all his men and he didn't want to retreat. So there you go.
That'll get you.
Yeah, that will. So, well, interesting. All right, cool. We can move on. So if you don't have any, that's fine. I just kind of wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about new series ideas for possible like new YouTube videos for me to make. I didn't know if you had any. I do. Oh, awesome. Yeah. Go for it.
So a while ago, you made a video about the dragons of Middle Earth. This was a while ago. Yeah. And let me just say that video was great, but why stop there? My favorite part of the Legendarium, hands down, my favorite part of the world building specifically is the creatures and the beasts of Middle Earth, which is why I love Lord of the Rings Online, because there's such a variety. I think a fantastic series, because you currently have some really good ones running right now. I really enjoy epic character histories, but how about like a biography of the creatures of Middle Earth. Talk about wargs and how their body plans are set out, what they act like, where they're found, stuff like that. I'm just a huge animal and nature nerd, and I love to mix that with the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Because I mean, ultimately, with my Beings of Middle Earth series, I talk about histories, but not as much the behavior, the physical attributes, the mental attributes of the creatures. So that would actually be really fun. Kind of get into that, see how each dragon is greedy and all of that. Yeah, definitely.
Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of creatures that are named in the Legendarium, but I do think that they specifically talk about a good amount of mystical and cool beings that you could go into. You could go into fell beasts, you could go into wargs and other stuff like that. A lot of them are evil, but they're not all evil.
Yeah, that's true. And that's kind of why, like, exploring east, I would have loved to see what kind of creatures there are in Rune and Far Harad. Right, you have like the Mama Kills, but I wonder what else is out there. You have Bilbo and the Hobbit talking about the werewolves, and I think they're mythical within the Legendarium. I don't think they actually exist, but they might. I mean, I know in the Hobbit movies they brought the werewolves in, but I don't know if they exist. You know?
Are there werewolves in Battle for Middle Earth?
Oh yeah,
I think there are.
Then there might be. I have to look more into that.
I mean, none of that is canon per se, but
that's true. But if there are a lot of things pointing to it, that's very true. It could be.
Yeah.
Now I've gotten some requests because Middle Earth, right, is a big place, and and the geography of it is confusing to some readers and some newer people to Middle Earth. But I'm not exactly sure how to tackle a geography video because I like doing my region spotlights, but that's more for the history versus here is where this is located in proximity to this place. But yeah, if you guys in the comments, just let me know what you think about a geography video and how I should kind of do that. But Royan, I wanted to hear your thoughts too.
I think this could be a really cool video, especially for beginner like fans or just people who are newer and just don't understand like how the maps are set out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think you could easily do a video, and you could probably get like not too long, not too short of a video if you just went through like the different time periods that we know. Yeah. And then the different maps that we have. So for instance, in the Lord of the Rings, you could take a map of Middle Earth and you could just like you could either go macro in, or you could just kind of move across the map like this is the region, this is called Eriador, here are the regions here, and then here are the people that live here and where they live specifically. You could also talk about like famous battle sites, stuff like that, and you could just move across the map that way. And you could do that for probably do that for a lot of the maps that we have. And basically anything from the Silmarillion that gives enough information about the geography. Someone has made a fan map out there somewhere for it.
Yeah.
So you could take a look at those.
That's true. Yeah, and so you said approach it by time period and region as well, like, and that's what I was thinking. If I go like
I mean, if you were going to do a map on just the Middle Earth from the Third Age, specifically the War for the Ring, that could be a really I'm not saying it's an easy video, but it could be like an easily understandable video, structured pretty simply, where you just go from like, these are the Kingdom of Men, this is where they're located, here's Sauron's areas, here's Eriador, Angmar, hobbits, they all live here, whatever.
That's interesting. Yeah. See, I haven't thought about that, because what I was thinking was like, here's Eriador and like move through Eriador. But I actually think if I approached it by factions, if I approached it by races, so like, yeah, the Kingdoms of Men are here. I zoom into Gondor, do a little blurb of what that's about, go into Rohan, Dale, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's very true. I think that would... Because I'm just trying to figure out...
I think that'd just be a fun time.
Oh, yeah. And I'm just trying to figure out what's the best tool to help new readers. Because, yeah, it's very confusing, you know. We're going across the Brandywine River and Buckland and Crick Hollow. And
where are these links?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I know he provides all the maps, but yeah, you shouldn't have to
They're
be
not
like
always easy to understand.
exactly. You shouldn't have to be a cartographer to understand just like a book.
I mean, yeah, that's another way you could do it, is that you could follow through the storyline. You know, I'm not saying that you spend an hour and a half going
Yeah.
through
Yeah,
everywhere they go, but you could be like, and this is the Redhorn Pass, and this is where Gandalf and his team failed to cross the Misty Mountains because Saruman it was being mean, and so they turned back. And then they went here, which is the Mines of Moria.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I think that would be fun because yeah, that couldn't go. The thing is that I would have to kind of break this. I get into this state of mind where I have to go through almost every detail I can find about a certain area. So but it would have to be kind of these shorter descriptions. Here are the men of Gondor. This is kind of what they're like, what they look like, and then we move on, kind of thing. And yeah, I think that would probably be the best way to take it. So, all right, well, we can move on to. Oh yeah, okay. So I wanted to get your thoughts about this. So people have wanted to. I've gotten a few suggestions to make more videos about this series and the DLCs that have been coming, but ultimately I feel like the DLCs are even further from the lore and all that kind of stuff. And you can get my thoughts in my original video. But what do you think about Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War?
Okay, so before I start talking about this, I should explain my experience with it. I purchased and completed the storyline for Shadow of Mordor, which was the first game that came out. I did not purchase Shadow of War, not because of lack of interest, but because I was just it was not on my priority list, and I just didn't really have the time, and I don't really play a whole lot of Xbox anymore, but so that's where I've gone. I've never purchased DLC for the game. I've never really heard about the DLC. I haven't really done a whole lot of. I know what Shadow of War is about, and I know enough about Shadow of War to talk about it, but I have not played it. So if anyone has played the game before and I mess it up, that's why.
Yeah,
I haven't played it. But the way I look at it is, it kind of just goes back to everything that I believe as far as fantasy writing goes, and that is pretty much I think that the original writer, in this case being J.R.R. Tolkien, has the right in himself to create the world and to and to provide a storyline, which is what he did. Now, since then, it has become immensely popular, and thus a lot of people want to capitalize on that interest, and a lot of people want to be able to dive more and to create more content within what's already set, and I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, if you're looking, I think that the games are for a set audience of people, and that audience of people is people who enjoy Lord of the Rings, who enjoy the storyline, and enjoy the landscapes and characters, but are not absolutely married to having things canon.
That's
now,
fair.
Me personally, I don't believe the importance of canon. I think the idea that having a set what's real within something that in itself is not real is kind of silly, but I understand a lot of people really like that. So bottom of the line is I played Shadow of Mordor and I really, really liked it. It was a fun game. It had a engaging plot. It had some really engaging characters, and my favorite part was the absolutely fantastically built areas that you could be in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to take somewhere as desolate as Mordor and as deserted as Mordor and make a game with enriching content. And I think they did the game developers did a fantastic job of it. I don't hate them for deviating from the lore, not because I disrespect the lore, but because I believe that people should have the right to make their own story. Now, whether or not they can profit from that story is a different question, a different debate altogether.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Warner Brothers has the rights to the Lord of the Rings, and they sold it to them to make the game, and there's really nothing we can do about that. Now, as for Shadow of War as a game, from what I understand, the lore deviations are more and more frequent than in Shadow of Mordor, which I don't think is inherently a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing if you spread off the path and then make a bad game.
Yeah, I agree.
That would be dumb. But if you spread off the path and then you have a good game for a good audience of people, that's fantastic. And that's what I heard it did for the most part. Now, I also heard that the game has this grind session.
Yeah, I heard about
for people. For people who have played the game, they understand what this is. I have not, so I don't know the specifics, but I do know that there's a point in the game where you then, in order to progress, have to just grind out for hours and hours. I think that's dumb. I think that's stupid, and I think it's purely a ploy to push microtransactions, and that is something that I hate.
Yeah.
I hate microtransactions that unlock content. I like microtransactions if, for instance, I play League of Legends and I purchase skins because I think they're cool.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't like it when you pay to have more storyline, especially if that's a part of the main story. I can forgive games like Skyrim, where they have this set game with hundreds of thousands of hours of whatever you want to do, you can do. Yeah. And then they're like, well, we took another 2 years and we developed this story that we call Dawnguard. You can buy it for $10. And I'm like, oh, give me that.
That's fair, but like the kind of more meaningless side of DLC, that's
yeah,
fair.
Loot boxes, anything that's like, oh, purchase this in-game currency to do this in the game. It's like, why are you doing this?
Yeah, see, and I think that's my problem,
especially for a game that you've already paid for. If it's free to play, I understand the necessity.
No, and
I understand the necessity of making money from a game that you put money into.
Exactly, yeah. I hate that they're trying to capitalize so heavily in the Legendarium. Now, I get it, right? They did sell the rights, like the Tolkien estate did sell the rights and all that stuff. We got excellent movies out of it and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, that they're trying to capitalize so heavily on this Legendarium and this world that we all love, it gets to me a little bit with like you said, with the DLC and the microtransactions. And I'm just, that's a modern gaming problem in general, but when it comes into something as rich as Middle-earth, it just hits
a little too close to home for you. And I understand that.
And it's also like the story. I mean, again, you can make, I agree. If you want to take liberties with certain things, that's fine and that's interesting. You just have to do it well. And like I always say in my lore reviews, it has to just fit the tone and the theme of Middle-earth. Something that really didn't, and I mentioned this in my lore review, was that that they made Shelob this shape-shifting woman. And I just saw on Facebook the other day, someone commented on a post in a Middle-earth group, oh, I didn't know Shelob was this beautiful woman. And
she's not.
I just kind of, a little part of me died inside because I just thought, no, she's not. She never was intended to be by Tolkien. But that's just kind of the oversaturation of pop culture in something as grand as Middle-earth. That's where it's like, I completely agree with where Christopher Tolkien was and is coming from, in that he doesn't want so much pop culture to be integrated into Middle-earth. And I guess that's a question in and of itself, is how much is too much when it comes to modifying or adding to some rich lore. And that's not just for Tolkien's works, but something like Star Wars is feeling a lot today. It's like, well, no one's going to be happy, so how much should we add, and all that kind of stuff. Is it nostalgia that we're holding on to, that we don't want anything to change? Or is it just that it's so perfect, any change would kind of dirty it up? And I feel like it's more the latter. I mean, Middle-earth to so many people is this perfect, pristine place that was made by one mind and edited by that mind's son. I
mean, that's the thing. It's really, really easy to understand something when it's coming from one mind, and at this point, one mind edited by another in the Tolkien Legendarium. But the moment you start adding more people in, you get more creative thinking. And I don't think me and Yoisen agree. I mean, we don't agree at this point. On this point, I understand where he's coming from, and I believe he understands where I'm coming from, but we just don't agree with each other. When you get more people involved, you just get more creative thinking, and then more things happen. And whether or not you want to respect that, or everybody has their own right to enjoy what they believe.
Oh yeah.
And
maybe it could be, who knows? I mean, it could be this wonderful thing. But I feel like Tolkien wrote Middle Earth as a story to tell his son or multiple children before, going to bed, that kind of thing. So if it becomes this, if they kind of do to Middle Earth what Disney has been doing to Star Wars.
Oh my gosh.
Which, it's not all bad, don't get me wrong. I do like some of the newer Star Wars stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's not George Lucas. It's not the original kind of idea. Now, if you want to make a new franchise and kind of have some inspirations and callbacks, that's completely fine. I'm all game for that, but you're touching someone else's legacy, and it's just it can make you cringe a little bit. But no, I completely get where you're coming from. I see that, like, you get more minds in there, and there are some interesting things that come up. There's definitely some interesting things coming out of Star Wars.
Yeah, you could say that.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
I like Solo, but. Yeah. I actually really like Solo, but I understand where a lot of people's criticisms come from, and with especially the last couple movies. And I don't think Lord of the Rings is going to get there, simply because Lord of the Rings has this unique position where everybody's heard of some of it, but most people haven't heard so much of it.
That's true.
Star Wars, like, there was the original movies that everyone saw, so everyone understands when in its creation, they understand step one. George Lucas made movies. Well, Tolkien made a whole bunch of notes and then wrote a book with some of the notes. And then with the rest of the notes, he started writing more stuff over a long time. And not everyone understands that step one of all his notes and stuff like that, because there's so much lore that he has down that's just not explored in most people's minds.
Yeah, very true. Well, cool. Yeah, we can. We'll jump into the next thing, and why I also bring up Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War, the whole Warner Brothers kind of feel, is that, do you think, going into the Amazon TV show, do you think a lot of this, like, similar writers or similar, I guess, ideas will go into the show? Now, I know they're drawing from like the appendices and all that kind of stuff, especially with season 1 Aragorn. I'm sure they're drawing heavily from Appendix A. But do you think similar writers will get in and change things up like they did with Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War?
Well, I think that is a given. Because, I mean, it happens even when you have the original author working on the show. For instance, Game of Thrones, the books, versus Game of Thrones, the show, was different. And I think that's okay, because I think people get to decide which parts they like from each point. And I think that's fine. Now, with this show, because Tolkien is no longer with us, Christopher Tolkien is no longer working on the show, and recent news has come out that Peter Jackson is not actually working on the show. I did find an article that states that he put together the creative team behind the show. I don't know what that entails specifically, and of course, I don't think anyone has the details except for Peter Jackson. But I think because we're getting brand new people, we're going to get brand new stuff, and I'm excited for that. But I think the your question is, are we going to get new stuff with some of the stuff that we already had?
Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely going to happen. If it's a TV show and it's going to try to be popular in America today, you're going to have Aragorn with a love interest, and I'll bet you money it's not going to be Arwen.
Uh-oh. No, I do like how Amazon, if they haven't heard this yet, like, I'm sure they will, but they know how passionate all the fans are. I think we mentioned it last time, like, ooh, yeah, they can't mess up too much, but I could see them kind of going that route. But we'll have to see at the time. I'd love to. I think I'm gonna make like episode reviews when those come out. But
if it's good.
yeah, if it's good. Otherwise, yeah, it's not worth any true Tolkien fans' time of day. But I'll let you all know my opinions on that when you know, a few years down the road when those shows come out. So I'll also link the article that Royan was talking about in the description below, where Peter Jackson was interviewed.
Also, I think you should include the link to the original interview. Unfortunately, it's in German, but with your technology today and Google Chrome, you can translate anything. So
yeah,
use that as your own wish. If you interpret it differently than I did, that's great. I'm not German. I don't speak German.
Yeah, so let us know what you all think about that in the comments below. But ultimately, I mean, it's gonna be the most expensive show ever made.
So they should get the best. End of discussion. You should not. They shouldn't settle for anything less than the best, because that's what the Lord deserves for certain, and that's what the fans deserve. And I don't think, much like the Star Wars spin-offs, specifically Solo and Rogue One, if you haven't watched them, you can watch them if you want, but they don't rewrite the story, they add to it in some of the gaps. I specifically in Solo, this is not a spoiler, Solo has there's a love interest kind of thing going on, and it's not Carrie Fisher, it's not Leia, so you know it's never going to go anywhere.
That's true.
From the get-go. And I think that's probably what they're going to try to do in this show, or at least that's my spitball guess here in the middle of June, years before it comes out.
Yeah, true. I mean, though I do wonder, right, is because Peter Jackson is stepping away, are they going to make it like Rogue One, where Rogue One tied into, like, you could immediately plug in and watch episode 4 right after, is like 15 minutes after. By the end of season 5, the last season of the Amazon show
that we have so far.
Yeah, that we have so far. Is it going to be kind of like where, I don't know, Smeagol ends up with the ring and we immediately can go and watch the Fellowship of the Ring right after? Is it going to tie into Peter Jackson's version of Tolkien's universe, or is it going to kind of take its own route? Personally, I'm kind of hoping that it does take its own route and we kind of see some new ideas.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that the show has the less common, more unique ability to where it can jump around throughout the lore based on a season. I talked about this a little bit on the last podcast, but I really think that the first season is going to be about young Aragorn. And if that really takes off, then they will continue with the storyline, but they could also just like have an offshoot from that storyline and be completely new, away from the Legendarium in its own, away from the storyline of the Lord of the Rings, and just have a story that with a set boundary, with some set rules, and then just go with it.
That's very true. Yeah. And that would be interesting to see, just kind of this new interpretation of Tolkien's works. And I've seen that they're really, from what I can tell, they're really going all in. They're going to shoot not just in New Zealand, but all these other locations. And they're going to bring in, I hope, some top tier writers. But
give me a Middle Earth jungle.
Oh yeah.
What kind of strange beasts would be in there?
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to just, because I mean, we might get that in the Aragorn season, because I know he goes into the Far East, and
we don't really know exactly what the landscape is like. We have some of the information from the appendices and stuff, but I don't think any of that is enough to wholly cover what the landscape could look like.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't know. I just this is a unique opportunity where we can kind of take a magnifying glass and go to other places that we haven't seen yet in movies or video games, that we've only heard about in the books.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen correct me if I'm wrong, but like, has Amazon's production studio made anything that like we know of? I feel like there was something, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Let me just search it up real quick. Amazon Originals.
Yeah, if any of you patrons have an idea of or heard of something, I feel like I'm just blanking, but please let me know in the comments below. Because I'm just interested. We might be able to look back at those productions and see if there's what we're gonna get from the Lord of the Rings series.
I mean, Amazon is a company with infinite resources, so I think they could really make anything they want. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing anything that I recognize. They definitely have some of their original stuff in the works, but I haven't seen any of this. Most of them are shows. I haven't seen any of it.
Yeah. That
there's all kinds of stuff. It says Amazon Original, so I'm assuming it's their original show. I've never heard of anything here. I don't know if that just means because it hasn't been released yet or what.
Yeah, that's interesting. That they would start with a franchise as big as Middle Earth. But I guess, I mean, all we can do is just really try to see what they put into it. All right. Well, I mean, I think that's all we have to say about the show as of now. This last month, June, the end of May, that wasn't too big of a time for news for the Lord of the Rings show or the Fall of Gondolin book. But and I wanted to address this real fast. I will be making a Fall of Gondolin video like I did with Baron and Luthien.
Yes.
I'll try to do that the weekend before it comes out. But I'll put, like, spoiler tags in front of that, so if people haven't if they don't know the story of Gondolin, I don't want to spoil it for them until they
Isn't
read it, but
the name of the book The Fall of Gondolin?
I think so, yeah, The Fall of Gondolin. So it'll probably...
Gondolin falls.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, but I guess
Spoiler.
How it happens. That's fair. All right, well, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us on this second podcast. If you liked what you heard, I guess, just let us know in the comments below. Also, if you have any improvements that you'd like to see, any topics, especially topics that you would want to hear us talk about, please let us know in the comments below. And
questions. If you have questions,
yes, yeah, questions.
We will answer them. I can answer them on my private account, or I can ask Yoisten to release them on his through the Men of the West. We'll figure that out at a later time. But if you ask questions, we'll answer them. I promise.
Perfect. Yeah, sounds good. So, to all of you guys, to my patrons, thank you all for the support. The both of us really appreciate it. This is just an interesting, and fun kind of side thing that we like to do. And really, you guys are giving us the opportunity to do it. So, thank you all so much. And yeah, I guess we'll be back next month with another Westernesse podcast. And it is Westernesse, not Western. So there we go.
It's I've only read it, so
yeah, that's fair. I always called it Westernese too. So
oh well.
Well, thank you all for joining us on this adventure. Until the next one, my friends.